not saying that anybody else has to do what I do. I'm not saying even what I'm doing is the best way to do it. All I'm saying is that this is the best way that I can do it. If this is the best way that I can do it and I'm effective in this way and I know I am, then that's how I'm going to do it. Yeah. I quite literally, I disagree with like 99% of what they say. But when
so why
I am
don't you
reaching,
say that to them?
Because I actually do.
These
How many
Nazis
of my videos have you actually watched?
None. So it's
okay,
cool.
So then this conversation is useless because you don't even know what I do.
That should be your third interview, Stardust. Bruh. Interview someone who's left Richard Spencer's community to come to yours.
I think that... What do you want to talk about?
I was gonna ask you the same question. But I guess I could ask, like, what was the intent behind dropping the Richard Spencer interview? Just, like, in general, but also, like, why do that so soon after, like, a white supremacist mass shooting that targeted specifically Black people?
I think people don't understand, like, the context of where I'm coming from. So, like,
okay.
While Richard Spencer, believes in some pretty horrible things, and I don't agree with him on anything that he believes in. For me, my main thing is, with Richard Spencer, I was building a relationship there so that I can set up further conversation. The first conversation with somebody like that is never going to be the most heated thing. You do need to, like, unfortunately, it's just the way it is. You kind of have to work things up. So I had to, you know, kind of build a relationship with him and show his audience that, like, I'm an actual person, not a character that they've all, like, made me out to be, because that's generally, like, the number one thing.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
So, like, to what end, though?
To what end is, again, when people, it's usually the first step, right? When people start to look at you as another human being, then that's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking to change people's minds overnight. I'm not looking to change people's, like, worldview. My main thing is, if I'm not in that space interacting with these people, a lot of these audience members don't have, all they have is basically a caricature that other people have made of me, or made of what somebody like me is supposed to be. I get that it's not for everybody. I've never said that my way is the best way. People have to understand, like, when I first started debating people, and even Richard Spencer wasn't a debate, it was like an interview, right? But when I first started debating people, it wasn't like, I was debating, like, old Muslim men, right? That was who I was debating on YouTube. And I have debated people on, like, why female genital mutilation is, like, you know, is something that we shouldn't be practicing anymore. So, like, when we have that in comparison to, like, Richard Spencer, you have to understand, like, it's just completely out of whack, basically, is what I'm saying.
Like, you individually, or the way that they view marginalized groups as a whole?
Well, if we're talking about, like, old Muslim men, like, I mean, they're just as racist as, like, any other socially conservative guy, right? And just as sexist as well, if not more so. And, you know, so like, my barometer for, like, for fucked up is, like, super off at this point, ever since then. So it's not like it
sounds kind of rough, honestly.
Well, I mean, it's fine. You know, I'm used to it. But yeah, it's fine. But
how so?
Well, I think I'm like especially suited to handle a lot of bullshit. And so
But,
you know, so I can handle that kind of stuff. I'm especially well suited for it. I'm not saying it's for anybody else to do. I'm not saying that anybody else has to do what I do. I'm not saying even what I'm doing is the best way to do it. All I'm saying is that this is the best way that I can do it. If this is the best way that I can do it and I'm effective in this way and I know I am, then that's how I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Like, with people like Richard Spencer and, like, old Muslim men and stuff?
It's not about Richard Spencer. It's not even about the old Muslim man. It's about their audiences.
Yeah, so because that's what I'm. This is what confuses me because we just had this conversation, and I get the whole desire to be like perceived a certain way when you know that you have no control over how you'll be perceived. But the question I ask when I say to what end is that is like, what is that in furtherance of? Because we've just talked about how you feel they perceive you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's cool. And you've explicitly stated that you aren't interested in changing anyone's worldview.
I don't
So,
think I'm going to change their worldview overnight. If I had that expectation, I would be disappointed every time. What I do expect is for them to walk away from the conversation with me, viewing me as like another human being at the very least. And I know that I'm successful in at least that part.
yeah, but this is what I'm saying is like, how does that benefit
That is the
anyone
first step.
else?
That's the first step into people kind of
Is
questioning.
it?
Yeah, if people are start questioning, first off, like we know that people being isolated and ostracized leads to radicalization. And we know that people, um, when the best way to
I
combat
think
that.
alienation actually leads to radicalization. Like ostracization is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you have to ostracize people, right, for certain behaviors in order for them to understand that those things aren't okay because they harm other members of society.
Sure, but
Society.
when a lot of people when people are ostracized and they haven't done anything to harm society, and I'm not saying that about Richard Spencer, I'm saying that about people in his audience, right? There are very likely going to be people in his audience who have not done anything, who are nothing but people who've like watched his content, right?
So, like, when you say ostracized, are you saying just like banned from Twitter? Because, like, when I hear the word ostracized, that
No, I'm
I,
talking about I don't care if they're banned from Twitter or not. I'm talking about people who don't have like a whole lot of connections to other people, like meaningful connections to other human beings. I think when you start to have like meaningful connections with other people or start to even view other people as like somebody you could potentially have that connection with, then that's when people start to question their views. People tend to get like super, they dig themselves down into the dirt even further if they feel like everybody is working against them. We know that
I
that's what
mean,
they did with like the Muslim extremists, right? Like what Muslim extremists oftentimes were isolated themselves. And
they're
because
an
they felt,
explicitly oppressed community, though.
but they may be oppressed, but they were also isolated on top of that.
Do you think the oppression or the isolation has more to do with radicalization?
I think the isolation, honestly. There are plenty of oppressed
Because
there are plenty of oppressed Muslim people, there are plenty of oppressed people in the world who don't become radicalized and turn into Muslim extremists.
I was just about to say there's plenty of isolated communities who also don't become radicalized.
How what would you define as isolated though? Do they feel like they have no contact with the people around them?
No, just they're what you would consider like a social or maybe even an ethnic in group. They have no contact with anyone outside their immediate like sphere of influence, but they're not by any means what you or I would consider radical or violent or
Right.
extreme.
So when I talk about like Muslim extremists, like we can look at like people who they aren't just isolated from like their the American culture. They're also isolated like even in comparison to their in group. They're in comparison to them, they're still isolated because oftentimes their in group isn't as radical as them either. And they feel like they're disenfranchised, they feel like nobody understands them, and that's oftentimes like a breeding ground for people to take advantage of people and for people to influence people and kind of like radicalize them further. I all I'm trying to do is open the door back up so people can start thinking and second guessing. Maybe if I can have like a decent connection with this person, or if I can understand this person, maybe I what I think about these people is wrong. And that's just step one. I'm not asking for anything more than that. I'm not asking for people to like praise what I do. I expect to get a shit on, and I always do every day. And I expect people to absolutely hate the fact that I'm interacting with these people. But I just want to be left alone, and I just want to be able to do what I do.
I don't think those are two like. I don't think you can say those two things. I think you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth there, where you can say that you expect critique when you do free PR for neo Nazis, and then you want to be left alone. Like you
Sure,
don't
no,
see why there would be.
I expect critique. Sure, yeah, 100%. I guess when I say I just want to be left alone, I mean like I'm willing to engage with people who have criticisms for me, but like once we engage, like I just want to walk my own way, you know?
But like, if you're doing free PR for Nazis, maybe just like stop and
Well,
don't.
that's what you view it as, right? You view it as free PR.
That's not what I view it as. That's how they view it. Look at the
I
comments.
don't think so. I think if you looked at it at the dissident right and you looked at Richard Spencer is not somebody who's well loved in the dissident right. If anything, all of America First hates Richard Spencer.
Who told you that?
Richard Spencer himself and Nick Fuentes himself, they hate each other. All of AF hates Richard Spencer. There's a lot of
Like,
infighting in the dissident right.
okay, so here's why this is kind of a silly conversation to have, because we're not talking about whether or not they like each other or whether they like get along in the locker room. We're talking about white supremacy. So it doesn't matter if they like each other because they're interested politically in the same thing.
It does matter because they are imploding on themselves because of how much they hate each other. Like if you
You're
look at
telling me
what's
that it matters that they would be standing on opposite sides of the lynching?
right now, they were like if you look at the dissident right now, they are way too much at each other's throats to get anything done. They're quite literally imploding.
Are you serious?
Right now. Yes.
We're not in the middle of like a whole wave of anti-trans legislation or anything like that?
And
You didn't
the
you
anti-trans
don't
legislation is something that's happening for sure, but that's happening from like
it's just a complete
moderate.
coincidence.
No, that's
Has
gonna
nothing to do with fascism in the
Are you
country.
you're gonna let me finish?
Sorry, my bad.
If you're talking about dissident right, the dissident right specifically right now, they're all at each other's throats.
Are we having two different conversations? Because I'm talking about white supremacy. Is there like a moderate white supremacist to you?
If you are talking about the spaces that I interact with, that
Yeah, white
people don't-
supremacists.
right. I know these spaces pretty well.
So you know they're white supremacists.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You're saying that it matters that they would be standing on opposite sides of the lynching because they don't like each other?
There's no lynching happening from them
No.
right now because right now they are at each other's throats.
Aren't we literally having this conversation because you posted a Richard Spencer interview like 5 days after an anti-black mass
Oh, it
shooting?
wasn't 5 days. If you want to know, it was like the same day. I did the interview the same day.
Oh, you dropped. Was there like what was the motivation behind that?
It was already scheduled, and I wasn't going to.
There was no way to like push because you know you could have pushed that back for like 5 years and still been the first person of prominence to interview Richard Spencer.
I wouldn't have. Richard Spencer already has people who he's been talking to who are much.
So why do you need to
me.
contribute to that?
I already explained it to you. I'm. It's not for him. It's for his audience.
And it's for you.
It's his audience is learning to
like
see
you.
Me
or entertain you.
No. I feel like you're being kind of we were starting off somewhere good where we were having a conversation and now we're kind of slipping into bad faith.
Okay, my fault. Let me steel man your argument. If I understand what you're saying to me correctly, you're saying that you platforming these people and just participating in their chat and like memeing with them is like
when do I meme with them? When do I participate in their chat?
What do you do when you talk to them on stream?
I don't participate in their chat. I talk to the person I'm talking to. I have plans beforehand. Like the Richard Spencer conversation, Like that would I have like a whole like thing that we planned out beforehand. I have a whole team that works with me to plan out the questions.
How isn't the whole reason you do this to reach out to other people's chats, like Richard Spencer's chat,
Well,
or like
to their audience, yeah, but I'm not reaching out specifically to the chat. Like their audience will see the
are
interview.
those two separate entities?
I mean, I'm not memeing around in their chat. I feel like that's inaccurate.
Okay, my bad. So you're trying to talk to this audience of neo Nazis to convince them to like you.
They're not all neo-Nazis.
You don't think people who like Richard Spencer are neo Nazis?
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
What is your qualifications for being a neo Nazi?
So some of them I'm assuming are moderate conservatives who've been kind of sucked a little bit too far. Um, and some of them I am assuming are like quite literally like far right.
We're talking about white supremacists, though, right?
Not all of them are
So,
white supremacists, but some of them, yeah.
but they have to, on some level, be okay with white supremacy to even be fans of this content, right? Because that's what it
Um,
is.
I
Because
think
you've acknowledged
I
that's what it
think
is.
they either have to be okay with it, or they either have to be okay with it or oblivious to it.
So, what's the difference between those two categories and someone who is into it and doing it because they're a true believer?
I think an oblivious person, and even somebody I guess who it doesn't really matter if they're oblivious or not, but like I think that when again I'm humanized before those people, they have to start rethinking in their head, like what they believe. Again, another thing I would say is that like when it comes to Richard Spencer and people like that, I don't think I'm the one platforming them. They have larger audiences than I do. So like by
But you're
far,
exposing them to your audience.
my audience though is well aware, like, and I clarify for my audience after the interview, like, this guy is still a racial supremacist.
This is why I don't understand, like, why, because you you've said that, like, maybe like one or two people you've poached from their chat, but I don't understand how that fence only works one way. How you wouldn't be conceived, like, it's inconceivable that Richard Spencer would poach one or two people from your audience, especially considering what we see in the comment section for that interview you did with him. That's number one. But also, I still don't get what this is in service of beyond getting them to like you, because it's like the meme where it's like step one, get the neo Nazis to be my friend. Step two, question marks.
It's
Step
not
three,
about them
profit.
making my friend being my friends or whatever. I am not okay with just letting people think of me as subhuman or as of a one-dimensional character, and if exposing myself to those audiences despite whatever hatred I'm going to get at the as a response to that, if that at least helps me fight a little bit of being viewed as subhuman,
It
then I'm
doesn't
willing to
though.
do it. But it does
It
because I've
doesn't
seen
feel
it.
good. I can tell it doesn't feel good for you. It sucks for you. I know it sucks
No, you know what? It
because
sucks
as
more. What sucks more is when I have people who I feel like should understand where I'm coming from, who should
I
understand what it's
don't.
like to be dehumanized over and over again and still see the value and like
I
reaching
don't.
out across the aisle. Yeah, so it's
Because
unfortunate.
I see more value in protecting the people who are the targets of those people, because we talk all this stuff about humanizing them and reaching out to them and so on and so forth, but like there's a whole trans community on Twitch, there's a whole like ace community on Twitch, there's a whole
Right. And
black
these are
community on
communities
Twitch,
that never gave a fuck about me. These are communities that never gave a fuck about me, whether I
and
was doing this or not. Whether I was doing this or not. They
you
never
don't
gave
think
a
that that
fuck.
has anything you don't think that that has anything to do with the fact that if I look at your YouTube channel right now, like every third thumbnail is you talking to or with a white supremacist? You don't think it has anything to do
Um,
with that?
it was before that though. It really was before that. I don't give a fuck. I've never needed anybody to be on my side with this kind of stuff,
So
and I
hang on. So
expect the criticism, but like,
it
but
doesn't worry you that the white supremacists want to talk to you more than the people that you actually share a community
I
with? That
wouldn't say
doesn't
the
worry
white
you?
supremacists really want to talk to me either.
Um, That's not what I saw. Seemed like they were pretty stoked to talk to you.
They're not really stoked to talk to me, no.
Why do they keep doing it then?
I kind of force my way with a lot of people.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You tell white supremacists what to do?
I mean, yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I make fun of them for their receding hairlines, yeah.
What does that do to combat white supremacy?
I mean, that's just part of, I guess, like,
Just makes you feel good?
no, I mean, it's back and forth, you know, like they get used to you after a while, and then maybe they'll talk to you. But I think that's besides the point. Like,
So why wouldn't you put that much effort into people that you actually share a community with?
I
It's just
do.
not.
I do. They're just not you.
It doesn't look like it to me, because if I look at your YouTube channel, it's PP Brit, Richard Spencer,
That's
Flamenco.
not true. Well,
It's not?
Flamenco is a moderate conservative now. Flamenco may have been different in the past, but he is a moderate
See,
conservative
it's
now.
weird because you keep saying this phrase moderate conservative to me like we're not specifically talking about white supremacy.
I'm kind of trying to understand where you're going with this. You're saying that I don't have people who want to talk to me when I book panels every week with people far more leftists than I do with righties.
It's not what your YouTube says.
Well, then you're not paying attention enough, are you?
I mean, probably not if we're being honest.
Yeah.
If you actually platform people whose voices need to be uplifted and empowered, like you do that, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need to do that with white supremacists?
Again, I don't view it as me platforming them. They often have much larger audiences than I do.
But it's still you handing them a microphone, so you can't absolve yourself of responsibility
It's
for
them
that.
handing me a microphone.
It's literally you deciding to say, yes, I will talk to you. Not only will I talk to you, I will broadcast it to my audience.
Sure.
What is that if not handing them a microphone?
I still think that because their audience is much larger than mine, they are handing me the microphone. If anything,
And that's the force field that blocks the sound waves that come from their voice to your audience.
Oftentimes those people are not willing to give you a platform. So they're not willing to give just anybody a platform. The fact that I'm able to even access that, I think should be saying something.
I'm going to try to ask this question really simply because I don't think it's been answered, and I'm kind of being snarky. I'm sorry. I'm really trying super hard to chill. I promise you, I am. But okay, what does the size of the person like you're talking to's audience have to do with you exposing them to your audience?
My audience.
I don't get it.
My audience is not so dumb that they're going to become Nazis overnight. It's not like I don't have that little faith in my audience. My audience is one, a lot of them are adults.
But you have that little faith in the white supremacist audience because you think that just by seeing you.
I actually clarified to you prior in this conversation. I said I'm not expecting them to change their views or stop being the way that they're being. Wait a minute. What I am expecting is that they, at the very least, have to humanize me. That is what they need. And they have no choice in that when I'm exposed to them.
Do you know who Tom Metzger is?
No.
Does that name sound familiar to you?
No.
Okay, so Tom Metzger was a prominent white supremacist who used to do talks and do a bunch of stuff. Just out of curiosity, does the name Jason Tankersley ring a bell to you either?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because he's the head of the skinhead group in the state that you live in. But that's beside the point. Tom Metzger had two concepts, or two prominent things that made him special, that were like exposés that were done about him over the last couple of decades or so. Because this is the other thing, is that not only is white supremacy, like, not new, but, like, the government does it. So, like, it's not really the kind of thing that you can challenge by, like, being Twitch buddies with some of them. But so Tom Metzger talked about how one of the things you have to do in order to be exposed to niche communities, small communities, of people who feel maybe alienated or isolated so that you can recruit them. And what you do when you do that is you pretend to be liberal. He specifically
Right.
says himself, right?
But I don't have any delusions that these people are liberal. And I specify that to my audience as well. That we don't have any delusions that any of these people are liberal, have any kind of views that are anywhere close to me. But you have to understand, again, by comparison, in comparison to what I started off debating, these people are far more like, closer than the old Muslim men who are advocating for female genital mutilation. You have to
Right.
understand that I understand that these are not liberals. I don't think for a second that they're liberals. I don't think for a
But I
second
don't
that
think you
I
do.
agree with anything that they say. No,
I don't.
I quite literally, I disagree with like 99% of what they say. But when
So
I
why
am
don't you say that to
reaching,
them?
because I actually do. If you see my debates with them,
Don't
yes,
look
I
like it.
do. Richard Spencer, that was an
You debated
interview.
Richard Spencer?
It was not a
Okay,
debate. It
well,
was an interview.
right. So then, like, all right. So here's the thing. Because the original, I think, and you can
I feel
correct me
like
if
you're
I'm
not
wrong,
getting this.
because it doesn't make sense. That's why I'm not getting it.
I already explained to you. I understand.
It makes, I mean, okay, so like it's logically consistent to you because it's you and you're doing your thing. Cool. These
How many of my
Nazis are
videos have you actually watched?
none. So it's
Okay,
cool.
so then this conversation is useless because you don't even know what I do.
But the people in your comment section know what you do.
The people
The
in my
people, the
comment
other people who
sections,
watch you and talk to me know what you do.
right, the people in my comment sections aren't necessarily people who were initially my audience. My audience, if you know my audience, if you talk to my audience, you would see that there are plenty of people who've come from all around all of the political aisles. All of my moderators are pretty far left. I
You
just
think so?
yes, they are. Yeah.
How do they feel about you talking to white supremacists?
They understand why I'm doing it.
I kind of feel like they're not leftists then.
No, they are. They're farther left than I am. Most of my
Okay,
moderators are significantly farther left than I am.
okay. Would you describe them as anti-fascists?
A couple of them, yeah.
Okay, so what's anti-fascist about interviewing neo-Nazis?
So again, if you looked at the preparation, but I mean it's not like you could see it anyways, but there's the amount of preparation that went into interviewing him. It isn't out of
Did it
nowhere.
matter because his fans don't care? They
It
said they don't
doesn't
care.
it to you it doesn't matter. To you it doesn't matter. The point
To
of
the
that,
people that you said you're trying to reach, it doesn't matter, and they said as much.
no, that I've had people who've come over from like literally all over the political aisle.
You know a guy who knows a guy, but
Be
I'm looking
100.
at your
You will
comment
never get
section right
anywhere, and
now.
people want to be right. Damn it.
And
This shouldn't be
again,
so
my
tough to
comment
They said you
section
made
is
him look
not
cool.
my comment section is not exclusively people who are in my audience.
Right, yeah. His fans are saying you made him look cool. Good job. What's that for? To make you like feel better
If
because
one
like
comment
you're
on my
growing your audience?
if one comment on my YouTube
You think it's just one?
if well okay, so again, if a comment on my YouTube is talking about making him look cool, how many people do you think were in his chat saying that I looked cool? How many people have you seen in conservative chats who said, hey, this Stardust person seems pretty reasonable? Like,
It's weird that you're
that's a
like,
recurring thing that happens.
is it? Like, because you're
Yes.
asking me this, like I would know when I just told you I don't pay
Well,
attention to your content,
clearly
and you
you
can't
don't
show,
pay attention.
you can't,
Clearly you
but
don't
you
pay
can't
attention.
show me. You
Well,
don't have
if
any
you
receipts because I know
again,
I'm not the
if you
first person to
looked-
ask you this.
If you looked,
I know for a
if
fact
you
I'm
wait
not
a
the
minute,
first
wait a
person
minute.
to ask
If
you
you
this.
if you're gonna let me speak,
Yeah,
if
go
you
for it.
looked at any of my Killstream appearances, you would have seen in the audience, when they're not being fucking weirdos, there are people in the audiences who say that I'm pretty reasonable. When I go on people's shows who are significantly more conservative than I am, I have audience members there who will say like, "Oh, you should have her on again. I disagree with her, but she seems reasonable." These are things that I'm working towards.
So like, but again, nothing you said screams to me hey, I'm going to quit this whole white supremacy shtick. It's literally just I like you.
Well,
Stardust.
it never starts
I mean,
off that way.
it sounds like it's all about you.
It never starts off that way. People don't, people who are usually into that kind of stuff have been into that kind of stuff for years. They don't just shed it overnight.
I know this. We're talking about, we're talking about white supremacists, right?
We're talking about white supremacists, yes. And they often don't shed it overnight.
Do you know what white supremacy is? Because it's not just individual people being white supremacists.
Well,
it's an
why are
actual
you changing
systemic.
the subject? We're talking about people who
the
I'm trying to bring
subject.
over, right? No, it's not the same subject. I'm talking about people that I'm trying to make them see me as a human.
Okay.
I'm not trying to get them to change their entire world belief in one night. All I'm trying to do is get them to plant the seeds of doubt in their head. If that's it, then
Stardust.
that's it.
Stardust, this is what I'm saying. There's individual white supremacists, plural, and then there is white supremacy, as in systemic racism.
Yes, I understand systemic racism, but I don't.
Right. And you're telling me that you can't even convert regular, schmegular white supremacists.
These are white supremacists that have been spending years in their beliefs. If you think that you can convert them overnight, good for you. But my goal right now is to humanize myself before them, so they can't look a female minority and dehumanize me as much.
Stardust. We've been over that part. I get that.
The
goal is to make them like. I get it.
You don't get it. It's not about even making them like me, because sometimes and a lot of the time they don't like me. But if they have to view me as another human who's deserving of respect, then that is some progress that I have made with them.
Okay, so what does that do to end white supremacy?
Again, it plants the seeds of doubt.
And that eventually makes cops stop killing black people?
I mean,
that eventually makes people stop doing mass shootings. If you want to talk about
systemic racism, we can talk about systemic racism. But that is a completely different. That's a completely different.
They're the same conversation.
It's a different sphere. It's a different sphere, though, that they're operating in.
Okay, it's a different level, but this is why I asked you this, because you said your mods are anti-fascist.
I have anti-fascist. A couple who are, yeah.
Okay, yes, anti-fascism means exactly what the fuck is on the label. Anti-fascism.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask you, what is anti-fascist about this? And the only thing you can say is eventually maybe they'll kind of start liking brown people because they don't call me a stand-in word in chat. What is that? I don't understand. I don't get it. Walk me through it. So you're in the chat with the neo-Nazis and they've stopped calling you slurs. And boom, what happens after that?
I'm seeing people said they're scrolling. I don't see these comments. They say that Richard looked. I see a lot of washed up, cringe, pathetic. Yeah, I've seen that too. A lot of people looked at Richard Spencer and said he was washed up, cringe, and pathetic.
Okay, and this is again, we're talking about like comments.
Yeah, and I have people on my mod team. I have people on my mod team who have taken steps to lobby their government to ban.
If he's washed up, why'd you need to talk to him?
Excuse me. I'm still finishing. So I have people in my mod team who are very specifically anti-fascist. They have taken steps to lobby their governments to ban white supremacists from being allowed to visit their countries. So it's not like I have a mod team that is not super far left. They are significantly more far left than me. They have done actions to prevent white supremacists from being allowed to visit their countries. I'm asking you. And actually one of them lobbied specifically against Richard Spencer. But they still will back me up. When I go over into those spaces and talk to them, they will still back me up because they know what I'm doing.
Of course they will, because they think writing emails is anti-fascism.
It's not writing emails.
I'm sorry. In what fashion do we contact our congressmen to ask them to politely please tell the police to make sure that the Nazis stay out of the town square?
It's not about the town square. It's keeping them out of their entire country, right? And so if they were successful in doing that and lobbying for that, and they still understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Hold on, wait a minute.
The one who's not getting it is you.
I'm confused because we're talking about keeping them from going back to. I'm talking about America.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you say they're anti-fascist because they wrote
One of my mods
congressmen,
met with the prime minister of his country to make sure that that didn't happen.
America doesn't have a prime minister. What are you
I
talking
know,
about?
but it doesn't matter. He met with the prime minister of his country to make sure that people like Richard Spencer and Milo Yiannopoulos couldn't visit the country. If he can do that much and understand why I interact with these spheres, I think the one that's not getting it is you.
No, I like. Okay, so explain it to me again. Walk me through it. You're in the Nazis chat and they've stopped calling you slurs. What happens
No,
after
they'll
that?
still continue to call me slurs.
So there's no point.
It doesn't. That again, they have to view me as a human. That's the first
You
step.
as a human, right?
Yeah.
So what makes
A little
them
bit.
divest
A
from
lot
white
of them view
supremacy?
me more of a human than you do. So yeah.
I view you. See, here's the weird thing: is that like, and I'm gonna talk to you like real to real, like dark skin to dark skin. Is that it? Fence walking doesn't last forever, right? And this is part of the
I'm not a
reason
fence
why
walker.
you're not.
I'm not.
Mm.
They know that I'm a liberal.
But don't Nazis pretend to be liberals?
Not the ones that I talk to. The ones that I talk to are very specifically anti-liberal. They hate everything about liberal society.
But they'll pretend to be liberals in
They
furtherance
won't.
of white supremacy.
Not the ones that I talk to. When they're
Stardust, I'm
they're
hearing
in their spaces. When they're in their spaces, they are not pretending to be liberals. They are quite literally anti-liberal society. They are anti-everything progressive. They're anti-woman voting.
Stardust. I get that these people that you interact with that are performing characters on the internet perform in this manner.
You think Richard Spencer's performing a character?
No, I think he is an active like danger because he, first of all, this conversation is frustrating because it already happened. Because people stopped talking to him after Heather Heyer got clapped, right? But here you are dropping the interview the same day that the top shooting happened. And the only justification that I've heard since then that in this entire conversation, because the only thing beyond just I want them to see me as a human is something you can't even guarantee to yourself. So when I ask you what's the point, it's not
Spencer seeing me as a human though. It's about again his audience, and I can
but you've already said
at least one person is walking away, and at least one person is walking away from each one of those thinking about me more as a human than they would have thought initially.
And this is where I ask yet again, how does this challenge white supremacy? Because you can do that without interacting with Richard Spencer. You know that, right?
Yeah, I can, but I'm not as effective as I am when I interact with him.
I mean, there's a lot of people in your comment section that said you aren't very effective at all. If your goal is anti-fascism.
There are plenty of people in my comment section who do think I am, though. There are plenty of people in my comment section who think he's washed up and cringe.
So that means it's okay that you did free PR for a neo-Nazi because some of the other people.
It's not PR for him
they told you that
when I specifically tell my audiences that are watching that his views haven't changed. He's
but they're
still
not
exactly
the only
the same
people
person.
who are going to see that,
right? But
your audience isn't
right. But again, those audiences, whether they think that he's cringe or not, those audiences are still walking away thinking of me as more of a human than they initially
right. It's all about you.
Well,
but that doesn't work for me, Stardust.
It's more
no,
than
it's
just
not.
me. Yeah, it is. It's more than just me. It's anybody.
What's it about then?
It's about anybody who could look like me or who could be like me, right? It's not just about me. It's about
Oh yeah, I didn't complete my thought. I'm glad you brought this up because that was my second thought about Tom Metzger that I didn't complete because we kind of got away. But did you know that Tom Metzger has a Latino neighbor that he considers his best friend?
I'm not surprised by it. There are plenty of neo-Nazis
Oh,
who are Hispanic, yeah. So
but you know that there are plenty of neo-Nazis who have like, are you familiar with the phrase model minority?
I am aware that there are plenty of neo-Nazis who have wives who are of color, who have friends who are of color. It still doesn't change the fact that I'm still forcing people to view me as a human.
Are you though?
I am.
You trust them.
I don't trust them. I trust myself and my team who
And
helps
you could
me.
just tell through the vibe check through the internet that they're like not neo-Nazis anymore because they saw you
No,
interview Richard Spencer.
I'm not saying that they're not neo-Nazis or that they're not white supremacists in some sort of way. I am saying that they have to view me as a human being, and after a while, they will
That's
come
good for you.
around. They will come
Will they?
around. Yes, I've
Will
seen
they?
it happen.
Okay, but you haven't showed it to anyone.
What do you mean?
Like, I know for a fact I'm not the first person to have this conversation with you, right? So when people ask me things like, "What do you do? What anti-fascist stuff have you done?" I can say I worked security in a bar, and when we would have Nazi metalheads or Nazi punks that would show up because they occasionally show up,
Mm-hmm.
we would ask them to leave the club, right?
Okay. Big deal there. You could kick some people out of a club. Really good one.
Yeah,
They're
so
still
that means that
functioning
all the
members in
rest.
society, right?
No, that means that all the
They
rest of the
still
people in the
hold the
club
same
have to have a
views.
good time.
They still hold the same views. They still look at people the exact
Okay.
same way. They walk away from that bar still thinking the exact same things, and they don't think of you any differently than they initially did.
Stardust. The point is that it's not about me, it's about my community. I don't give a fuck if they believe that
They
outside. I
don't.
care
There's
about
no
protecting the
bridge that's
people
been
inside the
built.
club.
There's no bridge that's been built. There's no stepping stone that is returning people back
Stardust.
to normal society.
Stardust. Just like if they want to deal with racism, they have to address white supremacy. If there needs to be a bridge built, the white supremacists have to stop being white supremacists first.
Yeah, they
And
will. They
it's
will
not
stop.
it's not like
They will stop if they feel like there is a bridge and there is a place for them to go back to in normal society.
no.
They will.
You've seen this.
Yeah, people are often isolated before they hold these views.
Okay, I get the rhetoric, but like examples. Because you said you can't even do this, but I'm supposed to believe that
I can
it just
guarantee
happens.
that they view me a little bit more human, and as a result, they have to
Right,
start
I know.
thinking of that.
I know they view you as human, and that's cool. I'm glad that the Nazis like you. Excellent.
They don't like me. They just they it's not that they like me, because a lot
They
of
just
them don't.
tolerate you because you want to hang out with them.
No. It's not like
The people are making you interview them.
if you think that it's easy for me to get in there and like talk to them, it's not. It's like pulling teeth.
I mean, like, what's the point though?
I mean, I've already explained my point to you several times. If you don't understand
Right.
what
So
humanizing
no.
yourself, what humanizing myself does, and how people have slowly come over, and I have seen people slowly come over, then I don't know what to tell you.
Have you ever heard the phrase "dog is a man's best friend"?
Yeah.
Does that sound pretty accurate? Sound like makes sense? People really, really like dogs.
I don't know. I've never had a pet dog, so.
But would you say that it's accurate that people like dogs? Like people
Sure,
can get really,
like
really
dogs.
into dogs.
People like dogs, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that humans see themselves as a superior animal to dogs?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was one of the biggest pieces of advice that I received growing up in the county with a bunch of other white kids, that dog is a man's best friend, but it doesn't mean that man doesn't see himself as a superior animal. When I say to you, when you go into these chats and you think that you're humanizing yourself, that's cool, whether you're doing that or not, right? Let's assume that that's exactly what you're doing. How is that in furtherance in the end of white supremacy? Because like I was saying earlier when I was talking about the club, it doesn't matter because
you are not furthering white. You're not
can I
furthering
can I
ending white
can I
supremacy
can I
either.
complete can
Okay,
I
go ahead.
complete I am though, because what I'm doing is the neo-Nazi, as we've already stated, whether you bridge out to them or whatever stuff that you are on to them or not, they have to make the choice to not be a neo-Nazi anymore. Yes or no?
They need to have the ability to not be one before they can
But
make
they
a
have
choice.
to have that choice. Yes or no?
They have to. They can't make the choice if the choice is not available there for them to re-enter normal society.
Rated with 99.
Okay, Nazis can go anywhere. They have to decide not to be Nazis. Yes or no?
Yeah, sure. They have to decide to not be Nazis, but
Okay.
would you acknowledge? Do they have to have the
Hosted with
ability to
120
re-enter
viewers.
normal society first?
Not first. Absolutely
Yes, they
not.
do.
Are you kidding me?
The ability to re-enter the ability to re-enter normal society is.
Are you thinking
is
that?
vital.
See, this is okay.
Is
See,
vital
this is
for them
why,
to be able to even make that choice.
This is why I think you don't understand the nature of the conversation. Is because explain to me how white supremacist culture is different from normal culture.
You don't think that there's a difference between the culture that a bunch of groypers hang out in versus them hanging out with a normal culture, normal people who don't interact with terminally online right-wing spaces?
You don't have to interact with those spaces to enable them. Just like you don't have to be a right-wing person to expose your audience to those
Right, but
ideas by
terminally
platforming
online
them.
right-wing spaces are isolated. They don't have a way.
White supremacists are not. White supremacists are elected officials and police officers.
Sure, they can be. But again, what
They
I'm
are.
dealing with.
It's not that they can be. That's what we're fighting against.
Who I am talking to when I talk to these people is I'm talking to terminally online white supremacists, essentially.
Okay, and that's cool for you that they like you. This is what I'm talking
Again,
about.
they have to re-enter normal society. You're wearing a Sepultura shirt.
I am wearing a Sepultura shirt.
Okay.
It's schizophrenia as well, if you want to peep it. I'm dripped out, low key. Not to just you know what I mean. I got the Quake shorts on, you know. Shout out to my fellow '90s babies.
They used to wear Nazi symbols. You know
Who,
that?
Sepultura?
Yeah.
Do you know that Max Cavalera used to knock people out? Don't do this. I know him personally.
No, I know. Look, do you think they're redeemable then, right?
I'm literally an abolitionist. I don't believe in irredeemable people, Stardust. I'm saying that if you want to re-enter normal society, you have to demonstrate that you are not a danger to the marginalized communities that you target.
Right, but there has to be a bridge for them to also re-enter normal society. They can.
That doesn't include demonstrating that you're not dangerous.
If they still have to demonstrate that they're not dangerous. But if they don't have the bridge to go anywhere, they're not going to even them demonstrating that they're not dangerous isn't going to do anything for them.
They get that after they demonstrate that they're not dangerous.
They don't.
And you can't
don't get that. You
no,
have to make them
do.
not feel. I think we're talking about two different bridges here. I'm not giving a bridge that is redemption, unconditional redemption.
I think you kind of are.
No, that's not the bridge that I'm offering. The bridge that I'm offering is I am a contact to normal society.
Did Richard Spencer say anything about denouncing white supremacy in his interview with you?
Of course not.
So then why are you reaching out to him?
But that's not it's again, it's the audience, right?
For you.
Right. And the audience needs to know that there is a connection to normal society.
No, to you. Who is terminally online, by your own admission.
Do you think that them talking to me, if the audience talks to me, eventually comes over and starts to look around my community, that maybe that demonstrates that they're willing to engage with minorities?
It seemed like that would be the type of thing that would be fairly easy to demonstrate, especially if multiple people have this conversation with you, Stardust.
Yeah, I mean, I do have people who will come over.
So, like, right now, is there somebody in chat that's like, hey, I was a former groyper and, like, Stardust made me change my whole life and now, like, trans rights?
They wouldn't change their whole life, right? Again, people come to those places where they are after years of being in those spaces. It takes years to get them out.
Do you think they do that work or we do?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay, so if they're not doing the work, then why would you?
I'm sorry, if they're not doing the work, then why would it? Because there's somebody in those groups who is doing the works probably, or will do the work when they see that they can.
Watching Richard Spencer talk to Stardust is doing the work?
No, that's not the work. The work happens after that.
So, like, why would you make the bridge before that then? If you just said the work happens after you make the bridge to them. The
It
work is
needs to come
literally
from
just
both
not being.
sides. It needs to come from both sides.
Yeah, we agreed on that. And if they're not doing their end, then
It's not
question marks.
it's not an unconditional bridge, like I said.
You're saying it is though, because you
It's
just said
not.
them
If
doing
they
the work
come in,
comes after you.
if they join the community and they act like shitheads, then they get banned forever, right?
So Stardust, here's the thing though. The bridge is the offer to come into your community, right?
Yeah.
Why would you do that before they've demonstrated that they aren't a fucking nuisance?
They for them to even come over to the community, they would have to make that effort. They would have to go out of their way to do that. If they demonstrate immediately that they're a nuisance, then they get kicked out.
But like, do you understand why I'm confused? Because like you're
You
saying
just want
that
them to be isolated forever then.
no, I do not. What are you talking about? There's plenty of overlap between what you think normal culture is and white supremacist culture. White people own and run everything. What are you talking
Sure,
about?
yeah, I know they do.
Are you saying that they're culturally isolated because trans streamers won't talk to them? Is that really what the conversation we're having right now?
If we're talking about what the people that I talk to, they are
Yes.
terminally online. They're terminally online people who are very far right.
Okay. And you said you've made this bridge to your community to terminally online far right neo-Nazis.
Some of them, yeah.
You don't think that that's like the predominant share of people who would follow Richard Spencer?
No, not all of the people who follow Richard Spencer are
What
like that.
what percentage? Hit me with a percentage.
I
What
don't know
percentage?
the percentage. I can't tell you
50-50? Nah, spitball, ballpark.
I'm
50-50,
not spitballing.
75-25?
No, I'm not spitballing
Why
numbers like
not?
that. Because
Why not?
I don't know. But it
But you know it's not
regardless.
100%. But it's non-zero.
I think that's, again, some of them are, for sure, and some of them are not.
So when you say some, you're doing this weird rhetorical thing because some implies a minority. That's why I asked you a percentage.
I don't think it implies a minority.
You wouldn't say some instead of most?
I don't know what
You
the
don't think
numbers are. I don't know what the numbers are.
you really can't say you think most of Richard Spencer's audience is white supremacists? You really just can't come out and say that? That's something you really have to struggle with and think about and like ponder on? I'm being dead ass right now. I'm perplexed.
Yeah, honestly, because a lot of white supremacists don't even realize that they're white supremacists, right?
Well, that's not the point because you can still be dangerous, right?
Yeah, they can still be dangerous, sure.
Like a lot of white supremacists, like a lot of people don't think they're racists. Me personally, I've heard lots of times there's a difference between black people and N-words. And those people will tell you to your face that there's not a racist bone in their body.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
yeah, for sure.
Are we talking like actual white supremacists or just like softcore ESPN, like Cinemax, Channel 4 with the fuzz white supremacists?
I think that there's a decent amount of people who are like the ESPN type.
So like the moderate white supremacists, like the mild white supremacists. As opposed to like the spicy white supremacists.
Yeah, I think again, yeah, there is the issue. Part of the issue here is that we can't really. It's not easy to differentiate, right? So
Where, yeah, I feel you. Like, it's really hard. Like, it just sucks when, like, you're trying to talk to a cool white supremacist and, like, you can't tell the difference between them
okay, well,
and
if you're
an
gonna
actual
just
racist
be,
piece of shit.
if you're just gonna, I don't know, be an asshole about it, then I don't think we should
I'm
continue.
sorry. I didn't mean to be an asshole. It's just like it's funny. It's like legitimately funny to me to hear you say that you're not sure if the guy who influenced one of the most infamous fasci murders from the Trump situation, you're not
Do you
sure
think
if most of his audience
do
is white
you do you
supremacists.
think again the majority of his initial audience, they turned against him? Majority of Richard Spencer's and audience, majority of that what used to be the alt right has turned on him now.
But you just said he didn't denounce white supremacy. So like
No, he didn't. No, he's very clearly still like a racial supremacist.
so he just got like a fresh batch of white supremacists.
I think he is a little bit more guarded when he reveals that
He's
nowadays.
totally still a white supremacist though.
I think so. I think he's definitely still a white supremacist. So yeah, yeah.
But you're not sure if most of his audience is.
Well, yeah, because a lot of his audience now is different. So
But you're not a white supremacist and you can tell he's a white supremacist.
um, yeah.
But his other audience can't.
They might think he's like a nationalist rather than like a white supremacist. So
But they themselves aren't.
no, I think they're probably more likely to be nationalists, you know, or civnats even. So
What type of civic nationalism are we talking about? American?
yeah,
What would those people look like, would you say? They look like me?
I mean, some of them are Hispanic. You'd be surprised. So
Mm. Is our Spanish people, are they like a European colony or
no, well, I mean, again, they would. Some of them would be. Some of them would
they
be
look like you?
Mexican. Some of them would be Mexican. You'd be surprised how many of them are Mexican. So
You know that like there was this whole thing where Spain, they're in Europe and they like colonized.
I am well aware.
So like when you say some of them are Mexican, after I ask, do they look like me? Do you understand why that's a weird pivot or no?
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
But they're not white supremacists though.
I think it's a little bit more complicated, right?
Describe it to me. If you have the time.
Um, so like there's obviously people who believe in like separation, right? Based on race.
White
There's
supremacists, yeah.
I mean, not all of them are white supremacists. Some of them just believe in separation, yeah.
But the white supremacists have power in America, so white supremacists.
If you're asking me about potential audiences that I think I'm talking to, the potential audiences I'm talking to, some of them are going to be people who are think that different races should be isolated from each other.
So white supremacists.
Not all of them are white supremacists.
Okay, let's back up because I asked you something very specific. I asked you if you thought that most of Richard Spencer's audience were white supremacists. And we moved to some of them are ethnic separatists, we'll say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they believe that and Richard Spencer is white, why would they watch him if they're not themselves white?
No, some of them could be of different ethnicities, and still be yeah, not ethnic
White
nationalists.
supremacists?
Yeah, ethnic nationalists. So
White supremacists.
no, because if they're ethnic nationalists, it doesn't necessarily mean that they think that that
Yeah.
that white
This is big
people are
brain time.
superior. It just means that they think that people shouldn't be together.
You know, we already had that in America.
I
This
know
like
we
separate
did. I know.
but equal thing.
Yeah, I understand that. And I
And
know that that's but that was through
the
the
other
lens that was through the lens of white supremacy, right? But there are people
no,
who
the
Yeah.
word for
believe
that
This
is
is
white
big brain
supremacy.
right,
time.
the people who believe in ethnic nationalism don't necessarily believe that one race is better than the other. Some of them believe that they just need to be separate.
That's what segregation is, Stardust.
I understand
Separate
that.
but equal.
The segregation they're talking about is not the same segregation we're talking about what happened in America.
Yeah.
And you're trusting the
big brain
ethnic
time.
nationalists?
I'm not trusting them, no. I'm just explaining it
So
to you
where are
since
you
you're
getting that?
asking me.
Totally
Why are you asking me if you don't really care?
I do care. It's
You
very
don't.
concerning to me. You're
don't.
repeating Nazi talking points. That's why.
You're asking me what some of these people believe. If you think that I'm reaching out and trying to get people to view me as a human being, you don't think that I will go the extra effort to make sure I understand what they believe and why they believe it?
No, I asked you if you thought most of Richard Spencer's audience was white supremacists, and you still can't answer that.
I already told you I don't know. The answer is I don't know.
Not most, like you don't think most.
Okay.
I don't know how many
no.
times I have to repeat it for you.
Okay,
Next
if I say the
question.
phrase,
Next question.
okay, just for the
question.
clip.
No,
just
next
for the clip.
question.
If
Next
I say the
question.
phrase,
Next question.
okay, back to the question I had before that. Why would you offer a bridge to people before they have demonstrated that they aren't dangerous? Why are you mad? You seem a little
I
upset.
started blasting.
No, I'm not mad. I'm looking at my chat right now. Stardust helped me personally with my rape. Okay, well, you don't need to share that. Please don't share that again in the chat. That is not something to share in the chat. Thank you.
But you make rape jokes all the time, though, Stardust. I don't have that problem in my chat.
That person's talking about their actual rape.
What's the difference?
There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference when I talk about my rape and I make a rape joke. Yeah, there's a huge difference. So.
All right. I guess. Are you getting help from your chat right now?
No, I'm seeing they're like freaking out, so I'm just trying to understand like what are they freaking out
What are
about?
they freaking out about? Because you don't know whether or not Richard Spencer's audience is mostly white supremacists?
No, somebody said he hasn't watched your content, so how does he know what kind of jokes you make? Basically, yeah. It's incoherent stuff, so. Anyways.
I mean, a lot of your posts are incoherent, so I mean, that's kind of isn't that like your brand? Just like chaos or whatever? Like nothing actually educational?
That's not true. On Twitter, I might be a bit
sorry you
chaotic
got to deal with
because
these
I
people.
get tired of like explaining things over and over to people. So at a certain point, I just throw it out the window. But yeah. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do, Endless?
What do I want you to do? Honestly, you can do whatever you want to do. I would say that if anti-fascism is something that you would be dedicated to, as we all should be, you're not like doing that. In fact, you're kind of doing the opposite of that, because as much as you say, I'm talking to my chat, blah, 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 the people who watch that YouTube video 2, 3, 4 years from now are not going to be there to have that conversation with you. So the only thing that they see is the comment section where people are going back and forth, and it creates a false dichotomy where people can have indifference to white supremacy because it's seen as just another differing opinion in the casual discourse, right? And I'm sure, like, because you got upset at me when I started joking about moderate white supremacists, because we know there's no such thing as a moderate.
I don't think I've ever been upset in this conversation, but
No?
Yeah.
Okay. You took issue with me because you were like, if you're just gonna be sarcastic with me or whatever.
Yeah. If you're gonna
Yeah,
be, if you're just gonna
right.
be
And it
like,
was because I was talking about moderate white supremacists, right?
mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm saying. There's no such thing as moderate white supremacy. And if someone has been involved in white supremacy until they denounce white supremacy, why would you offer them anything?
Because a
But
lot of the time they don't realize what they're in.
Richard Spencer doesn't know he's a white
I'm
supremacist?
not talking about Richard Spencer.
That was like...
I'm talking about, again, people who watch this content.
You think people can watch something for years and get involved in those communities and like not know that they're into white supremacy?
A lot of people, believe it or not, are barely aware of the shit that they watch.
So they see Richard Spencer Sieg Heiling and talking about the Lugenpresse, and they're like, I don't know if this guy's a Nazi or not. Let me watch him some more and find out.
They probably don't specifically see those things, right? What they
How
specifically
would they not?
They,
That's like the first thing that comes up when you Google him.
Right. If they follow him on his whatever platforms he's on, they're probably, some of them, sure. But again, there's going to be a portion of them that don't even realize what they're listening to. They just,
because they've just been into it they've just been into it for years.
Possibly. I mean, I think we're looping. If you could choose the next 3 interviews that I do, who would you want me to interview?
So here's the thing, Stardust. We were looping because, like, I don't know, it's really hard for whatever reason to get you to admit that you just like talking to these people because it's enriching for you and is for whatever reason fun for you.
Does it look
I don't
like
know
it's
if
enriching or fun right now for me?
I mean, you're not talking to Richard Spencer, you're talking to me.
Yeah, but do you think that it's worth it, that the amount of like bullshit that I don't just get from you guys, I get it from their side too. So
this is what I was getting at earlier is like one side is criticizing you for talking to Nazis, the other side is criticizing you for being brown, and you're like, these guys seem more reasonable. That doesn't seem funny to you?
No, you haven't brought anything of value to this conversation.
I haven't.
I've yet to see anything of value. If you gave me something valid, like I think Aston gave me like a valid criticism earlier, and I was able to go with that. But like if you brought anything of value to this, it would have been fine. But I feel like I've just been answering your questions, and then all you've been doing is trying to kind of shoehorn me into either one, like having questionable views, which I don't, but it makes sense.
I've never said that you have questionable views.
Wait a minute, you implied so. And it would be stupid.
Example.
Excuse me. It would be stupid of me to be engaging in these communities and not understand the views that these people hold. I do a lot of research into what types of views different people in these communities hold. I don't just walk in there. I don't just waltz in there and just willy-nilly do things.
I didn't say any of that.
You implied that I was. You said basically you're regurgitating white nationalist talking points.
You were talking about how the ethnic nationalists were saying their version of segregation is going to be different from actual segregation.
Yes.
Because they said so.
Well, I don't agree with them. You think that I agree with them? I know that it's not like that.
You were literally arguing
stupid.
For them.
I'm not arguing for them. No, I'm not.
Okay. You
asked me what types of people. I gave you one example of people, ethnic nationalists. It doesn't mean that just because I know their arguments doesn't mean that I agree with them. Are you fucking kidding me?
I didn't say you agree with them.
Yeah, but you're saying that I'm arguing on behalf of them. I'm not making their arguments. I'm not.
You did.
No, it's not. You are the one who's painting me like that. You are the one who's painting me like that.
You literally just said that they said that their segregation is going to be different.
Yes, they say that for sure. They do.
Okay, yeah. But you know it's bullshit.
Of course. This interview is proof that I talk to all sides, I feel. This interview should be proof that I am not going into these spaces with no research. I know
Would
these
you learn
people
about? Okay,
from the back
you
of
think it's?
like the back of my hand. I really do.
You think that it's proof?
I do.
What did you learn about Black liberation in this conversation? Did we go back and forth about Richard Spencer the whole time, or did you
We
actually
did,
learn
yeah,
anything about Black people?
because you don't seem to know shit about him, and you don't seem to know shit about the communities that I interact with. If you knew anything about them, then I wouldn't have to be explaining half the shit I was explaining to you.
You don't even know if they're all white supremacists, Stardust.
Because a lot of them aren't. A lot of them don't even know what they are. A lot of them are lost people.
They're just lost people. They're just
Some of
lone
them are.
wolves, mentally ill people.
I mean, some of them are mentally ill, definitely. Yeah, some of them are definitely mentally ill.
So we're just making like Fox News talking points now?
No, I'm not talking about them being lone wolves. I'm talking about people who don't realize how deep they're in.
So you're telling me that they can be in that shit for like 5 years, maybe, we'll say, give or take, be a Richard Spencer fan that whole time and not Google his name
I mean,
a single time?
They can passively follow. They can passively follow the content creators they follow. Maybe
They're just passive fans of white supremacy.
A lot of the times, yeah.
Didn't we just say there's no such thing as a moderate white supremacist?
Yeah, there's no such thing, but there are people who are passive fans of content creators, yes.
But you aren't a white supremacist and you know that he's a white supremacist.
Yes.
So what makes you think that other people who are, according to you, aren't white supremacists would not also know that he's a white supremacist?
Because not everybody is as clued into politics.
What's the politics? I'm not even talking about politics.
I mean,
I'm talking about Google.
Sure, a lot of people are not clued in to the nuances in these communities.
What's the nuance about the video of him Sieg Heiling?
I mean, again, not all of them have seen that video. Not all of them.
The first result on Google when you Google search them, they haven't seen that?
A lot of people have not seen it.
You're going to sit there with a straight face and tell me that all of Richard Spencer's fans have not seen him literally Sieg Heil?
I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying some of them have not seen that. Yes.
But most of them have.
Passive. Some of them are passive viewers.
Why do you see, this is what's so frustrating is because it's like, I want to get to stuff obsessance with you, but you keep doing this tap dancey rhetoric where you can't even say something as simple as this neo-Nazis audience is mostly neo-Nazi.
I don't make
why do you have so much trouble?
I don't make absolute claims unless I know them absolutely.
What? So then how do you drive? How do you do anything? How do you walk?
I don't make
not
absolute claims unless I know things absolutely.
You're telling me that you don't absolutely know that most of Richard Spencer's audience is white supremacists. You're unsure. That's fuzzy for you. Mm-hmm. Why?
Because again, a lot of people in these communities are part of these communities before they even realize what the views are in these communities.
And you know that how?
It's just how it works with these people.
I mean, it's not. Sometimes, yeah.
People join communities before they realize what those communities are about.
But then once they realize what they're about, they make the decision to stay, right?
Then they have a conflict. Then they're like, I don't really believe all these things, but I like the people. And then they have to choose.
So then this leads me to two questions. Number one, how long do you have to chill around neo-Nazis before you realize that they might be white supremacists? And number two, how long do you have to sit around people calling you slurs and dealing with criticism from other anti-fascists telling you not to do this fuck shit and seeing that it doesn't work, that it only makes you feel good and being okay, so demonstrate that.
I mean, I have people who have approached me. I have one woman who's quite literally who identified as a white nationalist, who's married, has a bunch of kids.
We've been talking for almost an hour and a half, and they haven't appeared in chat.
I mean, again, it's not overnight, right? It's not overnight, but there are people who do frequent my community who will come around. I'm not going to out people.
Where are they?
I'm not going to out people.
They should out themselves.
I
It
don't
should
think-
be a glory. It's a good thing when you leave
Well,
a white
with the-
supremacist
well,
community.
With the way that you act towards this, I don't think anybody ever would.
How do I act, Stardust?
You're incredibly bad faith. You've been incredibly bad faith this entire conversation.
In regards to what?
Just in regards to everything. The fact that you're trying to, like...
Example?
Yeah, if you, like, again, you're trying to paint me as somebody who's arguing on behalf of, like, ethnic nationalism.
I am not. That is a straw man.
It is not a
That is
straw man. That is exactly
Okay.
what you were trying to do.
What did I say that even implied that?
I think we can just rewind it.
Okay.
Why don't we go on to, let me ask you a question. Next 3 interviews I do, who would you want me to interview?
Endless Cemetery, Arun Eno, and Josie, if she'll talk to you. Cause yeah, we've already established that people don't really take you seriously. But like, you don't have like, just before, because I think I think you want to get to the end is what I'm sensing, yeah? Just so I'm walking away with a sense of clarity. And I like understand your argument correctly. Please correct me, because I'm legitimately trying to steel man this.
I don't think you legitimately are.
Okay, so correct me.
I lost faith in this conversation a while ago, as around the time that you started implying that I'm making the arguments for ethnic nationalists.
I did not do that, and no one will be able to produce
did.
any type of clips
You
of me
did.
doing that. But
You basically implied that I'm making their arguments for them.
I
even
basically
though
implied.
even though you asked me what their beliefs are. You wanted to ask me what these people that I'm trying to convince to view me as a human, what their beliefs are, and I gave you what their beliefs are, and then you tried to make it out like I'm doing this horrible thing. I'm arguing their argument on behalf of. Yes, you did. Don't fucking gaslight me, my dude.
I'm not gaslighting you.
You are.
Is this what we're gonna do right now, Stardust? I asked you. You said they're not all white supremacists. I said, what are they? You said ethnic nationalists, and the difference is they don't think that their ethnicities are superior. They think that people should just live separately. And I asked you, Stardust, how is that different from segregation? And
they think it's different. They think that they would do it differently.
How is that meaningful to say when we know that they are just white supremacists?
Because because a lot of them aren't white. A lot of them aren't white.
You think you need to be white to be a white supremacist?
No, not necessarily, but if they think that
then why is that important to bring up
nationalism is the way, if they think that ethnic nationalism is the way, I don't think that necessarily means that they're white supremacists.
So you're telling me that there's like, I don't know, there's like Navajo supremacists in Richard Spencer's chat.
Not Navajo supremacists, no.
So it would probably be people who more align with what Richard Spencer's talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so white supremacists.
Not white supremacists. Some of them are, yes. But again, not all of them.
Why would not a white supremacist be into white supremacy?
They're not necessarily. I've already explained this to you. Some of them are very.
Richard Spencer's not a white supremacist?
No, he is. They're very passive viewers, though.
So you're just saying his viewers are too dumb to understand?
There are a lot
his
of
viewers are too dumb to know. They're too dumb to know he's a white supremacist. Is that what you're saying? They're just
not
like
dumb,
not clued in.
They're just too passive. They just view the content passively.
They see him sig heiling and they don't know what that is. They're like, "What's that mean?"
Again, not all of them have seen that. I think we're
not most either. Not most, just some. So
I think we're done, my dude. I don't think we're getting anywhere with good faith here. I
No,
tried to
okay, so let's
explain.
just close really quick. Your goal is you want to attack white supremacy, yes?
My goal is to humanize myself before
So you
people.
don't care about attacking white supremacy.
My goal, as I've stated since the beginning,
Hmm.
has been to humanize myself before people who don't typically see me as human.
But you haven't demonstrated how that makes other people not white supremacists anymore.
Sometimes it can,
Sometimes.
right? Everything is a sometimes.
No.
Yeah.
There's things that you can do that keep the community safe when the focus is on keeping your community safe and not trying to talk to neo-Nazis. You understand that, right? Because neo-Nazis like have their own community. It's pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. And
They got politicians, cops, all that.
mm-hmm. My community is able to handle this. My community is very strong,
Why
and
do you rely on them?
my community they're full of intelligent people. They're full of people who know what they're doing. And it's a group
How
effort.
many of them told you not to talk to Richard Spencer?
A few of them are hesitant about me doing it, but
So a few of them did, because it's
no,
a
they
dumb
didn't.
fucking idea.
No, they didn't tell me not to. They told me that they're apprehensive about it. But
How'd they feel about
majority of the
it after
people,
it came out?
majority of the people in my community support what I'm doing, and they know what they're doing.
But all the anti-fascists think that you interviewing Richard Spencer and doing free PR for him is good?
The anti-fascists that are part of my mod team, yes.
Is that what I said?
I don't know about the anti-fascists in the rest of my community, but the anti-fascists that are part of my specific mod team, yes.
See, that's strange because I care very strongly about what the anti-fascists in my community think. To the point where I've composed my community mostly of anti-fascists.
Mm-hmm. My strongest,
so it's
again,
really bizarre.
the strongest anti-fascists in my community are on my mod team.
Word. Just a question. Because we had the model minority conversation.
I'm really not interested in having any more questions from you. I feel like we've done what we can here. You've chosen to purposely misinterpret me or purposely strawman me, and I just don't
You can't
think
even answer basic questions.
I've answered all of your
You
questions.
haven't even given me that. You haven't given me the opportunity to do any of that.
I've answered every single question
you
posed
didn't.
to me.
You haven't demonstrated how.
You
have not
haven't
demonstrated how it attacks
You
white
haven't
supremacy.
You haven't demonstrated. I
You seem upset.
no, I'm not. I'm tired. And I don't really want to continue this conversation because you're
What's
like the
wrong?
you're the fourth conversation I've had today. So
Would you enjoy this conversation more if I was a neo-Nazi?
No, I wouldn't.
Kind of feel like you would.
I would not.
Word. Well, why do you talk to them?
I want to hang out with my community now.
It's not the neo-Nazis?
It's not the neo-Nazis. It's the
sure?
majority leftist community that I have. That's actually significantly more left than I am.
And they're all really, really stoked, and they all think that interviewing Richard Spencer is a really super duper good idea, and you should continue to talk to people like PP Brit.
Yes.
These are anti-fascists, like people who are Antifa.
Yes.
I kind of don't believe you.
Okay. Well, that's up to you.
All right. It's weird that you believe that these white supremacists like you when you admit that they just kind of want to fuck brown women.
They don't like me.
So then what's the point? I thought you were humanizing yourself.
I'm humanizing myself for their audience.
No, you're not.
I am.
They want to fuck you. That's it. You just said that.
No, I never said that.
You did. You said there was a weird white supremacist thing where they like Asian women, they like Indian women.
I didn't say that. No, I said that you had asked me earlier. You asked me earlier about, how many of them have friends who are minorities. Yeah, some of them do,
right.
and quite a few of them are married to minorities. That doesn't mean
the context of that conversation is very important, very, very important, because you know that some of them have a thing for brown women, or Asian women.
No, I did not say that. You're the one who's saying that now. But I
You didn't just say that a minority of them are married to like
they're
Asian women.
married to minorities, yeah.
Yeah, so
They're married
you
to
don't.
people of color. I think look, the people that I'm trying to get them to see me as a human,
Don't though.
they do. Because if
How do you
they're
know?
because if they're fetishizing me, they're not seeing
Oh, hell
Right.
no!
I
I
don't
know
really
the
aren't.
difference. I can
You do?
I do.
You can't even present to me any one of the people from their audience. But I'm supposed to believe that not only do they like you, they're not also actively fetishizing you.
Why would I introduce you to any of them? Those audiences. I can barely hold a conversation with you.
Stardust, you don't
Why
understand.
would I introduce you to my community?
You don't understand why it would be important to have people on deck to say, "Hey, I'm from Richard Spencer's audience, and I'm not like that anymore because Stardust talked to me."
Again, I have people who they're not going to radically change their views, but there are people who hang around the community who have come from those spheres.
Better yet, how do you know that they are humanizing you when you admitted that you don't know?
They are around, and
Where?
I do know because I've had conversations with them.
Okay, slide to the right. I know I'm not the first person to ask you this, but you always treat this question like it's something nebulous and not something quantifiable. Like you couldn't go, "Hey,
From being fascist.
you denouncing fascism or you're leaving this community. Can you talk about why?" That should be your third interview, Stardust. Interview someone who's left Richard Spencer's community to come to yours.
Again, you think that my goal with this is to make people just that
humanize you, yeah.
My starting goal, them
To be humanized, yeah.
them humanizing me is not.
And you don't even know if you're accomplishing that.
I started blasting.
No, I do know I'm accomplishing that. I get feedback every single time.
Where?
Let me finish. Are you gonna let me finish what I'm saying?
I just asked a simple question because you're making claims I'm asking you to substantiate.
You continue to talk when I'm trying to explain to you.
Just really quick.
No, not really quick. No.
Okay.
I have conversations. I have conversations with people after these things. I have people who will show up in my community.
I started blasting.
And again, my goal my goal is to humanize myself for them. I am not expecting people to change their views overnight. What I'm doing is planting seeds of doubt. If eventually they come over after a few weeks or a few months, then that's great.